Hey people, it's Dale Gamer here, and welcome to a Fallout 76 video that I've been wanting to do regarding a discussion between Bethesda issues and actual player-created problems, because there is a difference between the two of them. In this video, I'll be going over things ranging from certain pronunciations in the game that people are misusing, as well, and what the issue with that actually is, and why it's important. Which leads into a few additional things, all the way up to, certain mythological creatures Bethesda's actually using that got it wrong, things like that, which also tie in with the storyline and people complaining about the storyline, as well as what are the actual problems Bethesda created in the game, as well as for the players, as well as which ones are preferential by the players, and players actually creating problems that don't actually exist and saying their problems. So without further ado, I will be getting into this in a few minutes. I'm just going to let people get in here, give a few minutes for people to get into this discussion and join the stream and things like that. So with that being said, I'm going to give it a few minutes and then I'll start. So please bear with me. As usual, I got my coffee. Again, I'm going to wait for a couple people to get in here. And that's about it. As usual, YouTube doesn't like me. It says my stream strength is kind of inadequate right now. But that'll change. Up there it goes now. It's perfectly green. So one more minute and then I'm going to start this discussion. And hopefully I'm not going to go too long with this. I'm just going to get into key points here and what the significance is to them and how they apply, as well as a few additional things that what are going to be discussed in the patch notes, or what the Bethesda mentioned in the patch notes that are supposedly up and coming. So while I'm waiting, let me just cue that up right now. I just got to grab this, get this queued up real quick, and then I will, how's it going, buddy? Welcome to the stream. I'll be starting in basically 1 minute. I just need to get something queued up here, and that'll do it. So just bear with me one real quick second, and that should do it. Alright, new browser source. That's what I'm looking for. This has to do with something in correct. See here. Actually, you know what I'll do? I'll just take a screenshot of this. I'll take a screenshot of what I need to do and highlight it. There we go. Screen. After I get the screenshot up, I will I'll get it all set up. Device info. There we go. Okay, so let me, I'll get to that after. Alright, so I'm gonna begin this stream now. And, I'm gonna begin by saying there are some issues, obviously, with Fallout 76 that are on Bethesda's side, which I disagree with, that they shouldn't have allowed into the main game. But then there's a whole slew of player preference or players wanting something a certain way to the point where they complain about it and create an actual problem that doesn't exist. And then everybody agrees with what the person's saying from an opinion point of view, and therefore giving off the impression that there's a problem, which is why I always say that, you know, gamers that spread false information, and therefore it infects the entire gaming realm and the communities in general, so people don't know which end is up. Alright, so let me begin by explaining that a quarter of this game's problems are Bethesda's fault. The other 3/4 of the problems that exist that people are complaining about are player made up and therefore are not actual problems. So let me get into explaining the difference between them. Okay, first of all, the game crashing. That's Bethesda's fault. It's Bethesda's fault for not, you know, dealing with some of the things that are allowing to cause computer overload, because the way a server works, people are like, oh, the server crashed. The server itself doesn't crash. What happens is people's computer can only handle so much information. And even with the fastest computer, a computer can only read or process or, you know, produce information as much as the game has been programmed. Once a maximum point has been hit, it doesn't matter how powerful your computer is, and your computer is going to read the maximum that the game has to offer. So the rest of your computer using whatever doesn't really matter. As soon as you hit the max that the game's offering, the remainder of whatever is in your computer that you used is useless. It's not doing anything as far as the game goes. So let me continue explaining here. One of the things that I disagree with that never should have been allowed in the main game was the fact of duplication or duplicating items. People server hopping to get infinite caps, things like that. Those are actual problems, alright? Those are actual problems that exist within the game. Now, to circumvent that, Bethesda actually said, okay, we're going to stop allowing server hopping. So they toned down whatever was going on. However, the duplication issues are a totally different problem, because what you have here is people duplicating items, and then it causes, you know, the server to reach its maximum point, and then thus causing people's games to crash, which is the actual issue on, sorry, I was adjusting something, which is why, you know, causing the game to crash was mean, you know, it's unstable. So, such as launching 3 nukes and things like that. That's caused everyone that was on that particular server to get kicked off. So, at that point, how do you say that everybody's potential has been reached and caused their own computer to crash because they couldn't process the information? Oh, that's just the way it works. And as I said, your computer can only handle so much information, and if somebody's playing on a lower grade end, and if somebody's computer is running maximum and that causes an issue, anything underneath that's also going to do it. So basically, you stop the main computer, you stop the computer that has the best functionality, and everything else under that will also stop, because that's just the way it works. So, I don't know, that's just the best explanation I can give for it. Alright, so, It would be like having a bridge. If a bridge is stable, if this bridge is stable and this one's not, and this one's going to be higher than this one, you cause this one to disrupt, then this one and anything else under this will also disrupt. So that's what the basic way to look at it. It's not that you overloaded the server, it's just basically you reach the maximum potential that the computer can handle. Doing it to the best one will cause it to happen to all of them. That's just the way it works. Okay, so the reason why I bring that up is because that duplicating items, server can only hold so much information, or I should say, your computer can only hold so much information. When you have 15 people all doing maximum information, especially on a computer that has the maximum it can handle, and that goes, everything else is going to go underneath it. So even if you have one person duplicating something with a really high-grade computer is the equivalency of 4 people duping things with all lower-grade computers. But when you combine all 5 of those together, you're going to have a serious problem. That brings me into, that stuff was happening into the beta. That stuff was going on in beta, and Bethesda knew about it because it was all over the forum. You can still to this day go in and read it in the forum, and it never should have been it never should have been leaked into the main game. And that brings me to the second issue, where even though Bethesda addressed a lot of the issues with duplicating things, stopping, exploits, things like that, the damage has already been done, and people already have their items and have already reached potentials that they normally wouldn't have been able to reach without those circumstances that fast. It's not that they wouldn't be able to reach them, they just wouldn't have been able to reach them that fast. But as far as duplicating items, under that context, technically it would be the same thing as making 2 of the item, but when you're duping it, you're only using one section of it, so it's not technically an item, it's a copy of something that already exists. So when you make 2 pieces of armor, you actually have 2 pieces of armor, but when you duplicate one of those, if you duplicate an armor, you don't actually really have 2 armors. You have one code being read twice. So it causes a conflict because every item that's made has its own code. So when you start causing the same code to exist over and over again, then you start giving it out to people. Now everybody has the same code. Now, yeah, you're going to run into a problem. Okay, so that brings me to the point on, if Bethesda knew this was going on in the beta, then it should have been stopped and not allowed into the main game, which is where a lot of the other issues are coming from. But that brings me to the next point on, Bethesda should have wiped everybody's character on every server, reset everybody to 0, because removing the exploits does not, unless you remove all of the duplicated items, the caps that people got, things like that, stopping the exploits really isn't going to do much because these items still exist. What Bethesda should have done is they should have wiped everybody's character in beta, but instead they allowed them to carry that information over, which could be causing another issue because you have beta code and then you have the actual code itself. I still keep getting session expired error messages after I get booted out of the server for some stupid reason. And I should say the message is stupid, not getting booted out of the server. But I'll get booted out of the server, and then it'll tell me the session is expired or invalid. As if that's a beta. That's a beta message saying your session for the beta is expired because they had, only a certain amount of time to play in the beta. It was like 3 hours or something. So yeah, your session would expire. But why I'm seeing that message in the main game is ridiculous. So it's almost like the beta code is still mixed in with the official game. Now, I never played the beta, so the beta was never on my computer. However, some people have beta code and they overrode it. It's just a mess. But what Bethesda should have done after getting rid of the exploits is wiped everybody's character back to 0. So it removed all of the duplicated items and everybody had to start over. Even my characters I used had duplicated items. I don't want to say duplicated items, but I used exploits on my character. Okay, so now that brings me to the following point on, yeah, people would have an issue. Why should why should anybody have to have their character wiped if it's legitimate? That's the exact point I'm making. It would suck for people that did legitimate characters. However, everybody should also understand that, when you have cheated items still remaining in the game, it's ridiculous. It reminds me of what Blizzard did with Diablo 3, I should say. There was an exploit that Demon Hunters were using that allowed them to gain an additional X amount of percent. So what they did was they dominated they got a damage percent, an additional bonus damage percent they shouldn't have got, because they were equipping two items that weren't actually viable to be equipped to each other. In other words, the game wouldn't normally let you do it. So what Blizzard did was they reset all of the scores that people did with those, but they never removed the items from the character that allowed them to do it. So all people are going to do is do it over again. So in wiping these characters, yeah, it would suck for the legitimate players. However, everybody should also understand that the reason that they're wiping them is because for every one legitimate player, there's about 10 others that are not legitimate. So the non-legitimate players outweigh the legitimate players, and the legitimate players should understand that they're wiping the servers not to punish the legitimate players, but to remove the people that cheat, that remove all the stuff from the people that cheated, so everybody's equal again. And that probably would have stabilized a lot of things and prevented half of these crashes from happening, things like that. Unless you remove the duplicated items, stopping the exploit is only band-aiding the issue. Everything has to get wiped to zero. Okay, now that brings me to the point on player-created problems. All right, one other main issue that Bethesda has is that they didn't do the canvas bags. That's an actual problem. That's on Bethesda's end. That's again something that Bethesda is completely at fault at. As far as not issuing the refunds, that's a gray area. But mainly, a lot of the problems that came from this game is player-created preference and not wanting the game to be a certain way, which brings me to the next point I'm going to be talking, or I should say the next section of this video that I'll be talking about regarding player preference. And players using incorrect terminology or trying to apply specific things that only they want, and because it didn't turn out the way they wanted it to, everybody started discussing it's a problem by following everybody using incorrect information. So let me start by explaining the first problem with this. This is actually something that gets to me. It doesn't piss me off, but it does irk me because it's about the pronunciations of things in the game that people do. Now, this literally, what I'm about to say, ties in with the other parts of the problems that I'll be talking about. And if you bear with me, you'll understand what I'm talking about. I have to draw a parallel here. Hey, what's up, viewer? How's it going? I'm just discussing a few things here about the game. Where the actual problems are, and then players wanting something a certain way, so it's a problem for them. And then they're trying to blame that on Bethesda. Okay, so let me explain here. And again, you have to bear with me if you'd understand this. Alright, I've watched countless videos, and I've heard people in the game actually pronounce this entity in the game Wendigo. That is an incorrect pronunciation because a first of all, the pronunciation isn't the issue. It's what's going on with the pronunciation that is the issue that ties in with the remainder of what I'm talking about. So I got to start with the pronunciations. So if you bear with me, you'll understand what I'm talking about. So again, mispronouncing it isn't the issue. It's how it's what's going on with it that is. All right, so first of all, the actual pronunciation for this, and I've heard people say it consistently in videos and in the game, Wendigo is not an actual thing. It's pronounced Wendigo. And the reason behind I bring that up about the pronunciation is because it's almost like people don't look things up. So, let me explain. People will attack my videos when I say, you know, hey, this should have been explained or that should have been explained, and tell me I should have looked something up. But at the same time, you have a bunch of people rolling over for people who don't know how to pronounce something that is an actual thing, accepting it, and then when I say you should have looked it up, they go, what's the problem? So what you have here are two different groups of people creating a situational preference on how they want to apply it instead of applying it across the board, which is the whole point to a lot of these player-created problems. So, for example, the reason why I say this is a factor here, it's not about the pronunciation. It's about a bunch of fucking idiots copying somebody that doesn't do their research, who just decides to do something on their own without knowing what the fuck they're talking about, and then getting, for some reason, everybody else copying it, and everybody else copying it. Before you know it, you've got a bunch of people running around the game saying things that are not correct. So, for example, the reason why I bring this up is because there's a few additional things in here, such as the Mothman and a few of the things that people are going to bitch about the storyline and things like that. You have to be, if they're going to do that, you have to be correct about the remainder of the information about what you're talking about. So the storyline is one thing, and that's partially why I'm talking about this. And now you're getting into mispronunciations of actual mythological creatures. The actual pronunciation for that creature in the game is Wendigo. It's not Wendigo. You sound fucking retarded when you say it, and the player sounds like a moron when they say Wendigo. It isn't Wendeego. It's Wendigo. And the reason why I say that's why I'm harping on that is because a Wendigo is an actual mythological creature. If you look it up, you can find it. What it basically comes down to is it's an evil spirit that turns a human into a cannibal. It possesses a human and turns them into cannibals. The Wendigo has also been featured in the X-Men video game. It's been featured on Charmed. It's a supernatural entity, so it's an actual thing that exists, which this also kind of ties in with the Mothman. Now, when you have a bunch of idiots that are mispronouncing a name, mythological things get discussed in colleges, and there are actual classes on them. So if you wind up saying an incorrect thing around somebody who knows exactly what they're talking about, they're going to tell you, they're going to ask you what the fuck you're talking about. And that's why this is an issue. It's not about the mispronunciation of it. It's about a bunch of people following people who don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And then when somebody like me comes out, corrects them, they're like, oh, what the fuck, what's the big deal? It's not a big deal. The big deal is you sound like a fucking idiot that you don't know what the hell you're talking about on. So, as far as Wendigo, there's no such thing as a Wendigo in Fallout 76. It's a fucking Wendigo. And if you talk about this around people who know what they're talking about, or who take these classes in college for extra credit or whatever it is, they're going to ask you, what the fuck's a Wendigo? And if you describe it to them, they're going to correct you on it. So it's not about mispronouncing it. It's about getting your information proper, so when you do talk about it, you know what you're talking about, and that way anybody who happens to be in earshot of you, who knows what you're talking about, who knows what that is, you can relate to it, because otherwise you're just going to make yourself look like a fucking idiot. That brings me into Mothman. Okay, in this game, Mothman didn't originate in Virginia. Mothman is also a mythological creature that exists in the world. It's not any set place. It didn't originate in Virginia as the game is portraying it. Furthermore, if you actually read the descriptions of it, Bethesda has combined another mythological creature with the Mothman, the Jersey Devil. If you actually read the Jersey Devil, which comes from the Pine Barrens in New Jersey in the United States, you will find that the similarities between these two are being mashed together into one entity. And yes, it's fine to do for the game and everything else, but you should also understand, or people should also understand, where these things are coming from. And the reason why, again, I'm bringing this up and harping on this is because people are pissing and moaning about a story, but yet they can't even get their information correct about real, actual things. Now, I'm not saying that a Wendigo is real or the Mothman is real. What I'm saying is the information surrounding these things is real information. It's existed for hundreds and thousands of years, and these are just people that are taking it and not even understanding what the fuck is going on, but yet they're bitching about the game's storyline. Hey, what's up, viewers? How's it going, man? I'm just discussing player-created problems and the issues with pronunciations and why pronunciations fall under the storyline and people bitching and things like that. So you first have to understand that the education level of what players are bitching about is not the same thing as an education level of knowing what you're talking about, because what I'm talking about the Wendigo and the Mothman, go far superior. They far exceed outside the boundaries of this game. And if you actually understand what I'm talking about, you can look up what I'm talking about too, because you'll find out that what I'm talking about is correct. And if you compare it to the game's information, you'll see, yes, it's a video game, but if people are going to bitch about the story, or Bethesda is going to put these mythological entities in the game that exist already outside of this and have existed for thousands of years, you might want to get the information correct. So regardless of whether people have a storyline or not, you have a bunch of fucking idiots running around that don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And again, if somebody knows what you're talking about that happens to be in earshot of this, because these are real subjects, and you mispronounce it, somebody's going to look at you and go, what the fuck are you talking about? So that's why it's important. It's not about the pronunciation. It's about people not doing research after they tell me to do research about certain things. And then when it's brought up, it's okay for them to say it to me, but not for me to say it to them. So again, I'm not making a big deal about the pronunciations. What I am saying is if people are going to bitch about stuff, at least know what they're bitching about. So when you're dealing with the Wendigo, that is how it's pronounced. It's not pronounced Wendigo. There's no such thing as a Wendigo. It's Wendigo. So I've heard it in every video, and I've heard it in the game. People, I'm like, what the? That's not even a thing. So what you're doing is, why it's not a thing? Oh, it's in the game. It has nothing to do with that. The actual pronunciation from this, from mythological terms, is Wendigo. There's no such thing as a Wendigo. And if you compare the two of them, it's if you compare the two of them, you'll see what I'm talking about. So now that brings me into Mothman. Bethesda has spliced two mythological creatures together. And again, you can look up Mothman. And then you can also look up the Jersey Devil. And you will find the Jersey Devil in this game has been spliced with the Mothman to come up with something fucked up. Such as I forget the friggin' woods monster or frickin' whatever the hell it is. So anyway, the Jersey Devil comes from the Pine Barrens in New Jersey in the United States. It's basically a disfigured child that this woman didn't want from the devil, is what it basically comes down to. And then instead of, and she tried to kill it by getting rid of it, and it survived in the woods, and then it became this entity which basically comes out. It's the 13th son of something. So that's basically what the Jersey Devil is. And if you see the documentaries on the Jersey Devil and everything else, and then you look at what the information is in Fallout 76, you'll see the comparisons. Now, as far as the Mothman goes, what the Mothman is, under mythological terms, again, this is about, if you're going to talk about mythological stuff and understand it in the game, then you have to understand where the stuff is coming from. Mothman is basically, depending on which version of it you look at, it has two base principles. Mothman is it shows up right before an impending disaster, such as a bridge collapsing or, whatever, where people see it, and then that's a premonition of a disaster that's in the vicinity. Or it's somebody seeing it right before they're about to die. It lets them know they're about to die. That's what the Mothman actually is. But Bethesda took the Mothman name and spliced it with the Jersey Devil, and that's what you come up with, is this fucking stupid shit. That brings me to the next point on, if people can't even pronounce Wendigo correctly, what the fuck is with people saying there are no NPCs in this game? And that brings me to a debate that a fucking friend of mine, I never say this, by the way, you may have heard me say I get into heated debates with a friend of mine. I never say my friend's name because my friend's name isn't important. But this is the shit my friend talks about with this stuff. And so he will apply certain concepts and cherry pick certain concepts, but when I turn around and say the same thing to him, such as the case we just happened to have this on New Year's Eve, he can't take it. And so this is the same arguments that I get into with other gamers about my videos. So when you're dealing with NPC, NPC stands for non-player character. That's the abbreviation for it. And there is no, it doesn't apply to anything specific. It applies to any character in the game that is not controlled by a player, period. There is no set type of NPC. It's like when players say DPS. I'm looking for a character that has DPS. Every fucking character in a game does DPS. And so what happens is people start cherry picking the definition of what they want, how to apply to how they want it. So this is, again, one of these player-created problems that they enforced onto Bethesda. Bethesda removed all the NPCs from the game. No, they fucking didn't. Fallout 76 has tons of NPCs in it. The problem is players are trying to apply NPC to a very specific type of non-player character, and if it doesn't fit that definition for them, then it's not a non-player character. When in reality, non-player character is any character in the game that's not controlled by a player. Period. An NPC does not have to be a humanoid character. It's what people have grown accustomed, but NPC does not apply strictly to humanoid characters. Furthermore, getting quests in the game do not require you to go to an NPC. People are bitching about getting frickin' quests out of holotapes in this game, but when in reality they're doing the fucking same thing when you get a quest out of a book in Skyrim. How the fuck is that any different? One's a book, one's an audio tape. Same fucking thing. It's not coming from a humanoid. It's not coming from a human player or any place. That brings me to the point on a robot in this game can give you a quest. Getting a quest from a robot is no different than getting a quest from a human. Both of them are NPCs. So the point here is that these fucking idiots are bitching about NPCs, well, because they're only trying to apply how they want an NPC. My friend even said this. Oh, they removed all the NPCs. I'm like, no, they fucking didn't. And my friend actually tried arguing that an NPC literally means humanoid player. And I says, the definition of NPC does not say non-player character that only applies to human. It's a fucking NPC. It's any character that's not controlled by a player. That brings me to the point on DPS. This shit goes on in fucking Diablo and WoW, Diablo 3 and WoW a lot, where you have, oh, you know, I'm looking for a character DPS. DPS is an abbreviation. It doesn't have a set definition to where it applies to or any set character. It's damage per second, period. That's all it does. And so damage per second somehow has been translated into damage your character gives off. But in reality, if you take damage per second, it's how much damage a second an attack does. So therefore, unless an attack, under that definition, unless an attack actually does multiple seconds, it doesn't fucking matter. It's a damage per hit. And then damage per second usually applies to damage over time spells, or spells that take effect over time. So if there's more than 1 second, then you can say damage per second. It's every second that the damage is going through. So people have now transferred DPS and DPH into the same thing, and they're not. They're still completely different things, even though that's what people say. Now you get into the whole aspect of where people say, you know, DPS, I'm looking for a DPS, and then when you say, okay, I'm available, they say, no, you're this, and try to apply a DPS character to a knight or tank type of character. No, every character in the game does DPS, so the proper statement is, I'm looking for a character that does high DPS. And so my point is that people have taken what they feel like in preference, cherry-pick the definition of what they feel like it, and then cramming it into the game, and if it doesn't fit that definition, oh no, it's broken, it doesn't have any NPCs in it, it doesn't have any, you know, whatever. So, I can pull up this game and show you 19 different robots that all give quests and that you can interact with. And every person that says, who wants an NPC to be humanoid, will tell you those are not NPCs. Yet, totally ignoring the definition that NPC stands for non-player character. And one of the things, just as a touch-up, my friend argued with me about, he always says to me, when I say a game should have explained this, or, you know, in any one of my videos, if you look at, how are you supposed to know this? Or a game's supposed to tell you this, or this should be doing this. My friend actually tells me on all the stuff that I bring up. It's common sense. The game shouldn't have to tell you this, or play it enough, or play other games because other games do this. Yet, when he was playing this game on New Year's, he was playing, like, you know, he was messing around with the Fallout 76. An invite popped up on the screen that says, you have declined this invite. He goes, well, how are you supposed to know there's an invite? I says, it's common sense. Well, the game should tell you this. I'm like, no, the game doesn't need to tell you this. And I used all the information, I used every single statement that he says to me when I say a game does this, and he actually argued with me. And I turned to the people I was with in the room and I says, it's interesting how he can say those phrases to me. I says, I literally said to him, what I'm telling you is exactly what you tell me when I ask you the same question you just asked. How are you supposed to know this? The game should have told you this. And he just replies with, no, the game shouldn't tell you that. It's common sense. Play other games. I said the same thing to him, and he lost his fucking mind. He actually got pissed at it. And I says, you play the game enough, you'll know. That's what he tells me. And so this again, it's not just him. It's just, that situation reminds me of a situation a long time ago with another friend of mine that I knew. A friend of mine that went into this because I would ask him how to look things up that he was doing because it involved, some illegal things about modifying Xboxes, things like that. He goes, well, look it up. All the information is there. And then something happened where he knew somebody on a forum that brought his attention to some topic I brought up. And then he calls me up and says, well, where is it? I says, you have all the information. Go look for it. Go look for it. Look it up. You have all the information and hints. Exactly what he says to me when I wanted to know something, but because he wanted to know it, he got so aggravated that I wouldn't tell him, and I just said, hey, you tell me these same exact things when I asked you how to look something up, and that's okay, and you basically, I'm not going to tell you. I said the same thing to you, and now you're pissed. He's like, just tell me. I says, no, you don't tell me what I need to know when I ask, and so it's just like the mentality of certain people when they do certain things is like this, and that is a player-created issue. This is like mods with a game. People create problems in the games with mods and then blame the game company. And yet, the first thing they say, and that's why any games that has mods and shit, it breaks. Now, this is what I was getting at as this as a whole. There is a difference between, if you go back and listen to everything I said, there is a difference between an actual problem in the game and a player-created problem through preference and cherry-picking how they want things to be. Now, as far as this game goes, do I think it should have been $60? No, I don't. I don't think any game should be $60 at all. However, if people are going to cherry pick the way they want and not apply it across the board, they really don't have an issue. So the only people that really, as far as I'm concerned, had an issue or have an actual complaint are the people who got screwed over out of the canvas bags. Not the people that freaking downloaded the game, not whatever other fucking problems that people said. Now again, I'm not going to say that Bethesda is completely innocent with this, because a quarter of these problems are actual problems. They shouldn't have been allowed in the main game. Bethesda didn't wipe people's characters like they should have. Progress is allowed to be carried over. It's almost like they didn't remove the beta code from the actual code, because and I say code, I mean the game coding or the source code that made the game. I'm not talking about the CD key. So I'm talking about, I still get a message saying I'll get booted out of a server, and then I will get this message saying my session's is invalid. That's a beta message. You know what I mean? It says my session's expired or invalid. I shouldn't be getting an expired message when I'm logged into the game permanently just because I get booted out of the server. That's literally a beta message. Because in this particular case, I can say it's a beta message simply because the beta play only allowed X amount of hours, and they only opened it up during certain time frames. So yeah, you did have a session that would expire. But that message, I shouldn't be seeing that message inside this game itself at this point, just from getting booted out of a server. So that brings me to the next point on the last thing I'm going to get at before I end this stream, which is this right here. I'm going to put it right here. Okay, I have pointed out, I have it highlighted what I'm going to talk about here. And this is something that's supposed to be one of the upcoming things in the patches. This is in the patch notes. This is actually on the launcher, as you can see what I have highlighted. Player vending. I don't know what the fuck that is, but that doesn't sound good at all. Now, the issue here is people had problems not playing the game, wanting to play it, getting refunds, things like that. I got this game when it came out. I got it like 2 days after. It was like 3 or 4 days after its release. Okay, somebody gave me the money and I got it. So, in essence, I paid $60 for this game. I didn't pay $60 personally. Somebody gave me it and I got it. So, at the time, I got $60. I don't really give a shit. I mean, people are like, oh, it should be this. That's the way it is. Deal with it. But, at the same time, all of the stuff that had a problem with, I just bared and dealt with it. Now the game's pretty much playable. I'm enjoying it. I'm not looking at it as a follow game, but that's not the point. The point here is that because a lot of players dropped out, I think they're trying to put an auction house in this game. Now, let me explain why that's a fucking problem. First of all, unless the auction house, if this is, I'm just looking from a point of view that this is going to be an auction house. I mean, I don't understand what the fuck player vending could be other than some type of auction house, but we'll see. But I'm taking, this is just a discussion as, this is me saying there's going to be an auction house. Don't take my word on it again. And so I have to be clear about saying there isn't going to be an auction house. This is my opinion about what this means. Don't go around saying, I said there's an auction house. Okay, so anyway, that being said, player vending to me means one of two things. Either an auction house or they're going to put vendors in the game as the way Elder Scrolls Online did it. Now, I'm not saying Elder Scrolls Online and this game are the same thing. You know, they're not made by the same company because they're not. However, that doesn't mean that the concept that was used in Elder Scrolls Online can't be used in here because they are under the same company. And let me explain why this is a problem. If they put this in the game the way I think they're going to put it in the game, it'll destroy the game's fucking economy. First of all, there's already sites selling caps. Other than caps, what the fuck could you possibly be doing with this? You can't do... It says player vending. That means, under context, the way the game is, any vending you do in the game is using caps, so it's a sale. So, unless they do some other definition to that, I have to go by what exists. So, vending means caps, and by putting an auction house into this game with this, it'll fuck up the in-game economy completely unless the auction house is put in, if they're going to put one in, it's put in the way World of Warcraft's auction house is, where anybody at any level can go up and put anything that they want on it for any price. Because if they pull the shit that is in Elder Scrolls Online, it'll fuck the economy up completely. Because in Elder Scrolls Online, people don't seem to understand why this is a fucking problem. The Elder Scrolls Online economy is completely fucked up because they use something called guild vendors or guild traders. Okay? Guild traders not only require, in order to use the, to put something on it, the guild traders in Elder Scrolls Online is your auction house. It's not an auction per se as in, you know, you can do stuff, but it's as in buy, you know, bid and things like that. But it's the fact that they have a vendor in the game set up that can only be done through guilds. Now, not only do you have to be in a guild to use that, but there has to be a minimal of 50 different people in the guild in order to use it. Now, when I say 50 different people, I'm not talking 50 different characters. I'm literally talking 50 completely different accounts. So, in order for you to even put something on the auction, on the guild traders, you have to be in a guild that has 50 people, plus you need the guild leader's permission to even do it. Now, why this is a problem is because those prices leaked out into the main game, so no player in the game can trade anything unless people check with the guild trader. Which means if you're not in a guild, the guild is dictating the price that you have to buy and trade something for. You cannot walk up to an individual separately in the game and say, hey, I want to trade this for you. Well, the guild, without anybody saying, I got to check with the guild trader. Well, the guild trader says it's this much. And basically, the guilds dictate the fucking entire price and economy in Elder Scrolls Online. If they pull something like that with this game, it'll fuck the economy up completely, and I'll stop playing it because I'm not going to be subjected and have an RPG or like an online game like that where I have a right to trade something without having something interfere with the ability on how I trade. So that's why I said if they're going to do this, they need to do it like World of Warcraft. You can walk up on the auction house at any point in time you want, put anything on there for any price you want, and then put a sale for bidding or how long you want it, and that's it. You can undercut somebody. You don't have to worry about saying, well, the trade house says this, or this says this, or this. No. You can do it without interference, And even still, you can announce it in chat and say, hey, I want to go up somebody. Hey, I need this amount. Can you trade this to me? Somebody comes up to you, trades it, and you don't have to worry about somebody saying, well, let me check with the guild trader and see what they have to say, and trying to force an amount into that when that has nothing to do with anything. So I just basically hope if they fucking put player vending, it's done through the same way the World of Warcraft auction house is, instead of the ESO economy bullshit, guild forced fucking whatever. Because, you know, one of the things in the Elder Scrolls Online is people would say, well, it gathers all the data. It gathers the data from the guilds. And what really got me is people were too fucking stupid in the game to actually understand this. They actually fucking argued this point. If they're going to say the data for trade and sell in the entire game is used to determine this price, then that means they have to go by what people are doing off the guild traders as well as on the guild traders. If the game is only reading the guild trader information, that's not an accurate average. That's an average on the guild only. So people fail to understand that guild only does not... There are two separate pieces of economy when you're dealing with trade. So there is the open economy, and then there's the guild economy. So if you only take the guild economy and remove this, you're getting half of the data. So for anybody to say, well, it gathers the data from the stuff being traded without this, they don't know what the fuck they're talking about, because the entire data, the data from the guild plus this are required to say the trade data for that item. If they're, but again, they're only going by guilds, and they think that's it. The guild trader says this. What about all of the fucking people that aren't going through the guild trader? Like if I walk up to you in the game separate, that game can't record that transaction, so it doesn't have that. So how the fuck does it know what everybody else is doing off of the guild trader? It doesn't. And that's the point, and that's just the fucking stupidity level that people are going on with. Now, if they're going to, there is a way to do the ESO economy without fucking with the system, and that is only allow the price that the game itself sells it for, not what a player decides to make the price. So this is again gonna, if ZeniMax Studios thinks by implementing an auction house they're going to get people to come back to the game that left it, they're sadly mistaken, because all they're going to do, if they don't put this in right, is fuck up the game for the remaining of the people in there. And I'm going to want nothing to fucking do with it. It'll literally destroy the fucking game. And basically in closing this, what I want to get out is that one of the main problems that players had with this, I did some digging, and one of the main reasons that players bitched about this game is because it was not for sale on Steam. Now, people could go around and say, well, you know, they did this to circumvent the, you know, the ability to give refunds, things like that. That's not even fucking relevant. The fact that it wasn't sold on Steam and players had a problem with that, so they caused a problem just for that alone, isn't in itself a fucking problem. That's a player-created problem. In this regard, I'm glad Bethesda didn't sell it through Steam, because it serves the fuckers right that a game that has a launcher does not require it to go to fucking Steam. If people want to buy it through Steam, that's on them. But if people are going to be that stupid to buy a game through Steam, which only launches the launcher of the other game, but then piss and moan about the launchers of these games, then they're fucking idiots, because all you've done is you've taken a game that has its own launcher and require it to have another one for absolutely no reason at all, and it literally does nothing except launch the launcher of the other game, and then sits there doing nothing. But if you try to launch the game without Steam, if Steam goes down, you can't play your game, period. So that's one of the main things that caused a problem with this. And then people have started coming up with their own cherry-picking information and things like that, which is why I got into the pronunciations of these things. People are bitching about, oh, there's no story. There is a fucking story. People just don't agree with it. Now, this game, Fallout 76, do I agree with some of the shit that Bethesda did? Absolutely not. But I am going to say this. I'm going to say this before closing this, before ending the stream. This game is proof that the average player's mentality isn't required to make a game that's long, lengthy, and doesn't have a game does not need humanoid NPCs. It does not need to have a fucking story or a reason to do things. A game can be just there for no fucking reason. You're in it, you wake up in the vault, you go out. What more fucking do you need? You don't need anything else. People are like, oh, there's no storyline. There doesn't fucking need to be a storyline in every game. The story is you woke up, you're in a vault, you gotta go out in the world and fucking survive. Period. There's nothing to discuss after that. Well, I understand that they did some story, but that's not, that doesn't really even fit with this. I understand why they did it, but this game is a prime example where a game can be made without humanoid NPCs. It doesn't have to have RPG elements, and it doesn't have to have a fucking set story the way a single player's aspect does. Period. That's it. Wake up, you're in a vault, go out and survive. Done. Make your own way in the fucking world. Here's some stuff that exists, go find it. Here's some quests, go do them. Blah, blah, blah. That's it. What more do you fucking need? That's it. These players are, I need a story. I need this. No, you don't. This game is a prime example of that. So basically, people are bitching that this game does not fit their criteria. Because if it did, all people would say is, well, you know, there's no original games out. And that brings me to the final point before closing this. Okay. Players, it's almost like this game is specifically set up for mindless grinding. That's all it is. It's a generic story, that's it. It's sitting there, and players are pissing and moaning that there's not enough content in this. However, anybody that actually does play this game, if you go in there, players are now not wanting to do grinding. Okay, there are events in this game that give you XP, they give you things. I barely see any players doing that. The only thing I see players doing now is hanging out in this one area where the monsters consistently spawn over and over and over again, and all they're doing is to kill those enemies so they can level. The reason I bring that up is because what that's gonna do is players are already pissing and moaning that there isn't anything to do in the game anyway. That's because they're fucking sitting in a certain place doing the same thing over and over again instead of actually fucking playing the game like they're supposed to because they're too fucking lazy. In a grinding game, a game that requires you to grind, the events are there for a reason. If all you're going to do is sit and piss and shoot the fucking same enemies over and over again, you might as well be doing that in an event where you get multiple things, rewards, things like that. And so what happens here is, all that's going to happen is people are now just going into certain areas and only doing that area instead of going down to the remainder of the game because they either exploited their character, you know, did whatever, and they don't want to fucking do the grinding to get up further and anything else. And they're complaining that the game is empty, not enough enemies. But all they're doing by sitting there doing this is going to cause Bethesda to patch it so the enemies don't spawn. Now they're going to remove those parts from the game. So every time a player complains about something and finds a way to freaking manipulate the system to do the way they want it to, all that's going to do is spread the information around so Bethesda says we need to fix this. And now, instead of being able to farm those areas the way they're doing it now, they're going to complain even more that, oh, that Bethesda took this out, Bethesda took that out. Bethesda took it out. I'm not saying they're going to, but in this regard, if they did, Bethesda took it out because you're fucking being stupid. You're causing these problems yourself and then complaining that the problems you just caused are causing you to have problems. It's amazing what they fucking do. It's amazing. So, as I said in closing, a quarter of this game's problems are on Bethesda. The other 3/4 of the problems are just player-created problems due to preferential issues or not wanting to actually grind. Seriously, when is the last time a player... You heard a player or a majority of players in the game saying, oh man, I can't wait to go out and grind. Instead, what happens here is like, oh, this game's too long, this game's grindy. But if they didn't make it like this, players would be saying, oh, there's nothing to fucking do. If people stop fucking around in games, and it's not just this one, it's not just, you know, Diablo, it's the rest of them. You know, in Diablo, they fucking cut out levels 1 to 70, and they want somebody to power level them. instead of actually doing the fucking work to get up to it. And then they just copy everybody else instead of actually playing the fucking game. And that's what's going on in here. Players will take shortcuts and then complain the game is too short. It's fucking amazing, the stupidity level of players. So, case in point. Again, I'm not siding with Bethesda, but I am going to say this about this game. This game has plenty to do in it. This game has plenty of NPCs. The people bitching are the ones who don't want to do it that way. Other than that, this game's a prime example proving you don't need an in-depth story. You don't need humanoid NPCs. And there is just as much stuff to do to level you entirely in the entire game if you actually go out and play it. And, you know, the last thing I'm going to say before I actually end this video is that this is like GTA 5. I play GTA 5 online. The only thing people do in that game is just run around out in the streets, causing as many problems with the police as they can, and then shooting everybody. Or, you know, obviously, you know, blowing things up. In the meantime, they asked me how the fuck I got on top of a building. That is because I actually play the game. I run around in the back alleys. I find stairwells. I find things to do that I don't run around and just do the same shit everybody else is fucking doing. I ride down the street on a BMX bike. Instead, all anybody does is get a fast car. Let's go down to the airport. Race. And then they're like, oh, this game's boring. That's because you make it fucking boring. You know, you don't explore, so you know, you're cheating. You're on top of a building. I didn't fucking cheat to get up here. I just explored instead of going around doing the same fucking thing over and over and over again. So it's just this is player created problems. They create their own problems, then can blame the game creator. The game creator sees that the players are doing stuff to get around the problems that they created, remove those elements preventing the players from creating problems, which then in turn creates more player created problems. Then they blame the company. The company took this out. The company took this out because you're fucking not playing the game and you're doing an exploit or, you know, abusing something that wasn't really meant to be abused, where you can just go ahead and do this, you know, multiple other things to get the same result, but you're refusing to do it. So by removing it, it's going to force you to do it, but instead you're like, oh, you know, that's boring, I don't want to do that. But you'll sit and kill the fucking same group of enemies over and over again because it's faster and it's more convenient. I can go do those places. I think I did it, you know, I went over there, well, because I had a quest to do, but I don't fucking hang out in the areas. I'm going and I'm farming these certain quests. Like, people like, oh, I have a problem getting screws in this game. I have I almost have 200 fucking screws because I know how to farm them. I have no problems getting any items in this entire game. Yet people do, and that is because I play the game. And that brings me back to the main point about the player vending. What's going to wind up happening is, even now some players are still farming event areas so basically even an event that gives off that has low-level enemies in it, it's still beneficial because it gains you XP, it gains you items, it gains you rewards, it gains you plans, things like that you can use in the game that are beneficial, that actually help you in the game. But what's going to happen is, if player vending goes into the game the way I think it's going to go into the game, all you're going to have now, people, is all you're going to have is people piling into certain areas, and you won't see them anywhere else anymore. They'll just be in these one particular area, farming this shit over and over again, because it's like a pissing contest to see who can get more fucking money. And that's all it is. So, then you'll have an even bigger problem with bots and things like that, you know, running through the system to gain, you know, again, you already have sites selling caps. Some sites are selling 1,000 caps for like $3 American. So it's like now you're buying and selling in-game currency. It's fucking ridiculous. So, I don't know. That's all I'm going to say about this, and that's really what the difference is. Now I'm actually going to go off and I'm going to go finish some things in Fallout 76 that I'm in the process of doing. Well, Steel Gamer, signing off. Have a good day or night wherever you guys are. Thanks for tuning in.